Hello, my name is Chloe Knox. Today I'm going to be discussing a little bit about women's gymnastics and how to optimize their nutrition, including a little bit about their energy systems, how often they're being used, and different macronutrient recommendations that are important for them. So the intended audience for this presentation is going to be basically any intermediate level audience that would like to know this information, but also for sports scientists, performance nutritionists, and exercise physiologists. So the objectives we have, we're going to identify energy system contributions across different gymnastics events and how those events change what levels are being used in which energy system. We're going to calculate ideal macronutrient intake for elite gymnasts and see what that looks like. Implement carbohydrate loading and fueling strategies, design effective recovery nutrition protocols, and evaluate evidence-based ergogenic aids, which ones can help them and which ones help them in which areas. So these are demands that come with gymnastics, more specifically the NCAA gymnastics. So they're going to be training for 6 days a week, 4 to 6 hours a day, up to 30 hours a week. So basically full-time job. Injury rate is about 4 every 1,000 hours, and they're dealing with forces up to 10 times their body weight, so they need to be strong. The prep phase is going to be approximately 8 months from May to January, and that's going to be the longest out of all the NCAA sports. And the competitive season lasts from January to April, and their goal is about an 83.3% success rate, so that means 20 out of 24 attempts for everything they're attempting needs to be successful. So looking a little bit at this table, the HP group stands for higher performing and the LP stands for lower performing. So as you can see, the HP, they weighed less and they also were smaller in height. And that led to their BMI being lower than the lower performing group. So you can see how that kind of ties into the mentality of the smaller ones tend to perform better. And in regards to subscapular skin folds, they found a negative correlation to performance with the greater the amount of skin folds, and that reflects upper body fat storage. And the thoracic width, which is basically the width of the thoracic region, which correlates with lung capacity and respiratory mechanics, and that was a positive correlation to performance. Okay, so this is going to be the different energy contributions, the amount of contributions from different energy systems, and it is event specific because there are different events in gymnastics which require different time frames and different times, and that affects what energy system that they're ultimately in. So for vault, that's going to be a 4 to 7 second process, that's ATP PC primarily. And then uneven bars, that's going to be 30 to 75, so it starts in the ATP, but then it moves over into glycolysis. Balance beam, that's going to be primarily glycolysis and oxidative because of the 30 to 75 second time range. And then floor, that's going to be 90 seconds, so primarily oxidative, but it also dips into the ATP and the glycolytic energy system. So this is just going to be a little bit of a visual for the floor routine, which, as we said, lasts about 90 seconds. It's primarily more than half oxidative in the oxidative system, 64%, ATP PC, that's going to be 21.3%, and then glycolytic is 14.7%. So this is some data taken from actual NCAA gymnasts and their energy expenditure metrics. So the amount of calories that they're burning per session is about 880. Their energy cost per kilogram of body mass is 21.54. Their resting metabolic rate is 1,050. Their daily intake in kilocalories is 1,712. And their intake to resting metabolic rate ratio is 1.63. So these are some macronutrient recommendations pulled from some studies. I'd say that this is about a range and there could be more research done on this subject, but in regards to carbohydrates, they want about greater or equal to 5 to 6 kilograms per kilogram per day. And they actually found that a lot of gymnasts were eating below that amount. For protein, it should be greater or equal to 1.5 grams per kilogram per day, and they want gymnasts to break that into 20 grams of protein per meal and 4 meals a day. Fat should be greater than or equal to 30% total kilocalories, and for calories in total, they should be reaching about 1800 or above a day. And that's just important for everything: recovery, growth, and hormone balance. Okay, so the main point here is going to be that athletes, especially gymnasts, often underconsume, especially in carbs, and they only drink water during training. So again, their carbohydrate goal should be greater than or equal to 6 grams per kilogram per day. And we want to gradually increase that by 20 to 30% via snacks because they're not eating the amount that they should be. And if they don't eat enough carbs, then their glycogen depletion is going to be about 26 millimoles per kilogram per hour. So during training, gymnasts should be eating at least 30 grams of carbohydrates per hour, or zero point 0.5 carbohydrates and 0.2 grams of protein per kilogram per hour. And after that, it's recommended that gymnasts eat a high glycolytic index carbohydrate with some fluid and some protein. So that could be like milk and a banana, for example. And then for hydration, it's always important that you prevent at least 2% of body mass loss through perspiration and everything. So this is a little bit about gymnasts and how they can recover and how their nutrition can help them recover. So immediately after exercise, they need carbohydrates, fluids, and protein. And again, that 4 meals a day with 20 grams of protein, that distribution is going to help them recover as well. One of the reasons it's so important that they eat enough anti-inflammatory foods is because in one of the studies, they actually found that after a Wingate anaerobic test, IL-10, which is an anti-inflammatory cytokine, increased by up to 27.7%. So they need to be eating fruits, vegetables, omega-3s, and that basically helps overall with their recovery. So this is a little bit about some evidence-based ergogenic aids that could help gymnasts. It's specifically important to look at the dosing and at what point in time gymnasts should take those aids before training or events. And it is also important to look at the time frames that the ergogenic aids kick in at. So at what time frames in energy systems those aids would be playing a role. For example, beta-alanine, it kicks in at around 30 seconds to 2 minutes, and that's going to be towards the end of glycolysis. So that at any other time frame really wouldn't be helpful. For example, that beta-alanine, it wouldn't really be helpful in vaults or any event like that. So caffeine, that increases power, focus, counter movement, jump height. Creatine has been found to increase peak power. It also increases lean mass. Beta-alanine increases buffering and fatigue delay, specifically towards the end of glycolysis. Sodium bicarbonate buffers pH and can help in their repeated sprint or floor endurance. And for nitrates, that's going to be an anti-inflammatory, and that could also increase sprint capacity. This is just some important physiological markers for gymnasts. Their VO2 max was found to be 50.2 milliliters per kilogram per minute. Blood lactate measured after they simulated a competition was 9.8 millimoles per liter. And again, after the Wingate anaerobic test, they found IL-10 go up by about almost 30%. And yeah. So these are just some key takeaways from the presentation, some important information. So different events in gymnastics are obviously going to require different energy system demands. Vaults versus floor, ATP versus oxidative. Nutrition, that the purpose of nutrition is to enhance performance, recovery, and injury prevention. And then fueling and supplementation must match event and training volume. So like I said, based on those time frames and when those ergogenic aids start taking place and start affecting the body, you're gonna need to look at that. And yeah, personalized strategies, they always beat one size fits all. These are my references. And after that is a quiz, so I hope you're paying attention.